All right, good Thursday evening, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. We have a great edition of the Mental Dimes College Football Podcast. Obviously, we just came out of conference championship weekend, so now we have all the answers. We don't know if we wanted them, but we have the answers from the college football playoff about who is going where. We will talk about all of that. But as always, we're going to get started with some introductions. So as always, hosting is myself, Neville Triplett, and we've got Coach Tuck over here as well. Please feel free to interact with us. If you want to hit us up on X, you can get with Coach Tuck at @Tuck_coach. Hit him up. He will respond. He'll probably think you've got a conspiracy theory. He'll want to talk to you about that. I am at NG Triplet. You can hit me up as well. I will respond as well. We have our Mental Dimes at Mental Dimes CFB for our college football specific page on X, formerly Twitter, and we have our main one, which is at Mental Dimes. You can hit us up there. We also have our YouTube channel. Lots of great content there, not just our stuff, but we've got the NFL guys putting some stuff up there as well, recaps each week, so check that out. And we also have a Facebook page. Please interact with us there. Anywhere, there you go. There's how you can get in touch with us. Anything positive, hit me up at NG Triplet. Anything negative, send that over to Coach Tuck. He'll handle all that, and I'll just take credit for the good stuff. So anyway, here we go. We know what the college football playoff is going. What it's going to look like. So how was your weekend? What did you think of the games, and where are we at, Coach?
I was down watching my daughter play basketball for her college club team, and so I was just kind of popping in and out and watching a lot on replay. Shocked about the Alabama over Georgia. Did not see that one coming. That one was Washington beating Oregon surprised me, but it wasn't like kind of thing. Michigan, Iowa played out exactly as I thought it would, and so did Florida State, Louisville. I mean, I think really that Georgia-Alabama one was the only one where I walked away saying, what? Because in the beginning, it looked like Georgia was going to handle them. And then all of a sudden, it just like kind of fell apart for them. But did anything surprise you?
A little bit the same. I thought that Alabama did have a shot, and but I'm not shocked by. Would have been shocked either way. The Oregon one surprised me a little bit. I kind of thought that Bo Nix had been rolling and Oregon had been rolling. I thought kind of a revenge game. So man, listen, I got to give credit to Michael Penix Jr. in Washington. They did exactly what they needed to do, and just when it looked like, oh, here we go, Oregon's taking the lead, they've come all the way back, and Washington didn't panic. They go and get that win, and boy, what a big win it was for them. Obviously, keeps them in that top four, and we've got our conference champions. We had 4 spots. We have 5 conference champions. Somebody had to be left out. Obviously, by now we know who it is. But I thought a really good weekend of college football. Really enjoyed the games that I watched, and looking at the highlights, it looked like the ones I didn't get to watch, really competitive games for the most part. So I was pretty excited about that, and debated trying to put together a show for the college football playoff. I'm glad I didn't, because I was thinking it was going to be in the evening, and it was 10:30, 11 o'clock my time in the morning, so I wouldn't have been ready. But kind of what we talked about, and we talked about some last week and some off the air amongst the Mental Dimes crew, kind of filled out the way we thought it would. And obviously there was a lot of chaos. It could have gone a whole bunch of different ways, but it went the way it was, and a lot of people upset, and we'll get to all that. Let's take a look at the current CFP rankings, and then we'll compare that to last week, because you brought up some stuff about how a team could be ranked in the top 4 and not be there. So currently we've got, for those of you that are listening, you can't see it, we'll read them out to you. You already know it though. The college football rankings, number 1 is Michigan, number 2 is Washington, number 3 is Texas, number 4 is Alabama, number 5 was Florida State, 6 was Georgia, 7 was Ohio State, and 8 was Oregon. And those are really the teams that were kind of in some sort of contention one way or the other. We knew with Oregon and Washington, one of them was going to be out. And we knew if Florida State lost, they would be out. If Texas lost, they would be out. Now we compare that top four: Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama. Let's take a look at last week. Wow, what a difference. So last week, Georgia was number one, Michigan was number two, Washington was number three, Florida was number four, Oregon was five, Ohio State was six, Texas was seven, and Alabama was eight. So now what we're talking about is Michigan going to number one. Obviously, they had to. They did everything they did. They won undefeated. They were number two, number one lost. But when we go back and take a look here, what's interesting is we have teams 7 and 8 leapfrogging into this top four. We have Texas that was at 7, goes to 3, and Alabama that was 8, that goes to 4. Okay. Obviously both conference champions as well, but let's get to it. What everyone's talking about. What are your thoughts on Florida State undefeated, winning their conference, where they were at 4 coming into the week? They win, and then they end up dropping to 5th. What are your thoughts on, a couple of questions I guess I have for you. What are your thoughts on what the committee did? Should they have done that? And why they went that route? And then I've got a couple of questions about how they should have maybe ranked them. But let me get your thoughts on that as a coach on Florida State undefeated, winning, and dropping a spot to 5 and out of the college football playoffs.
Well, I think the biggest thing that we all have to take away from this is, what is the point of the penultimate rating, the rating before that, the rating before that? 7 and 8. What was okay? I get that you wanted to put, I don't understand why Texas and Alabama were 7 and 8, because you knew Ohio State was not jumping into the playoffs. There wasn't you knew the SEC champion was going to get in. You're pretty sure Michigan was going to get in. You thought that it was pretty much a guarantee that the Pac-12, theirs was going to get in. And so then you're really coming down, should it be Texas or should it be Florida State? Ohio State there was not I don't know, maybe if a nuclear bomb hit and wiped out 5 teams, maybe Ohio State gets in. But so putting them ahead of Texas and Alabama, to me, just smacks of clickbait. Oh, look, what's going to happen? Can Alabama and Texas leapfrog? And it was to me, it was dumb. And then the flip side is, why do these matter if a team that's 4 wins and they don't get in? Undefeated. You win your conference championship. Oh, well, they were on a 3rd string quarterback. Yeah, their 2nd string would have come back. Oh, they're on a 2nd string quarterback. Oh, okay. What does that mean to me? That means they won. Jimmy Valvano, what was it? Survive and advance? Correct. They got to survive. Where's the advance? So to me, it was just really disingenuous. I thought that they wanted an SEC, a Big Ten, they wanted a Pac-12, and then they wanted Texas. I thought that's what they really wanted, and that's what they went and got. And I think it's a joke. I think the committee is a joke. I'm not saying based on the 4 they picked. You can argue those 4, but all of these ratings are jokes, because they have just shown that nothing matters until the narrative fits the way they want it to.
Okay, so let me ask you this, a couple of questions, and kind of ties into what you're saying. So I'm going to ask you this question, and we're not going to apply it to whether it's right or not. In your opinion, not most deserving, not who earned the right, do you think right now the 4 best teams are in?
Maybe.
Okay. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that's how it should be, because I'm with you. I'm trying to figure out what they're doing. So I'll take the position that the best four right now are in, but that's not necessarily, like, to your point. Why do we have these ratings? So now it would come down to, okay, maybe they did that. I don't know if I agree with that. I guess my next question would be, who would be the most four deserving teams? Who deserves to be there? So I guess that's my next question to you. So at least the committee, it seems like, put who they think are the best four teams in, regardless of whether they should be or not. In your opinion, if you got to make this call, who would you say are the most four deserving teams that deserve to be there?
Michigan, Washington, Florida State. You went undefeated. Then it's a crapshoot between Alabama, Texas, Georgia.
Okay.
And did they get? I was listening to some SEC talking head going off about, well, why didn't Georgia get in? Georgia deserves to be in above Michigan.
Oh, that's asinine. That's ridiculous.
And I'm like, okay, do I think if we went best teams, is that still Georgia? Georgia's got an argument for the eye test. Michigan's defense, Florida State's defense, passed the eye test. Alabama, Texas, well, Texas, I think, passes the eye test definitely on defense. I think Alabama is just a well-rounded enough team with enough athletes that they get by. Most deserving, though, I'm going to go the three undefeateds. Okay. And then if you go by head-to-head, Alabama beat Georgia, Texas beat Alabama, Texas gets in.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you this other one, and this is a really fine line, and it may be the exact same thing. So if it is, we can move on. So most deserving, and that was your criteria, the three undefeateds, Texas by virtue of beating Alabama, who beat Georgia. Which teams, and this may be the same thing, and I couldn't figure it out when I put it on the agenda, which teams earned the right, even if they didn't make it? Or is that the same thing as most deserving?
I don't think it is. I think earned the right. Like, I don't think Georgia is deserving. You lost in the conference championship. We know that late losses weigh heavily. Early losses don't weigh as much. Earned the right. Georgia is coming off of 29 straight games. I don't know. Have you ever been in a season where you got really close to the end and you were undefeated?
Yes. A couple of years ago, we went, and I'm pretty sure we went undefeated, and we got to the state semifinals, the game before the state championship, and then we lost that game, and that was, I mean, as deep as I've ever gone in any sport.
I've had some teams that have come close, or I had one team that actually went undefeated. The pressure that builds on you as the season goes on, there is something to be said about losing a game. It can reset you. It can take that pressure off. Georgia's going like almost, spanning 3 seasons without a loss. I think things just started to unravel, and they hadn't been there before. And they didn't, like, there was just that. And to some degree, Alabama, Saban has shown that he can coach well enough to beat Kirby Smart. I mean, you think about the first championship, Bama beat Georgia. Should they have? No, but they did. And then they both got in. I mean, earned the right. You're back-to-back to national championship. Back-to-back national champions. You went undefeated. You lost a close game to a rival that's a powerhouse, that's elite. I mean, I bet you if you put Georgia in at number 4, they would be the favorites to win it all. So earned the right. I think they earned the right to defend. Now, if they were 10-2 and won their conference championship, would I be saying that? No. If they're 11-1, which I think is what they are, and right, with that one loss being to a rival on a neutral field, I think they earned the right. I think Michigan earned the right. I think Florida State earned the right. They did everything they could. I think Alabama earned the right. I think Texas earned the right. I think you had 5, 6. Well, what'd that be? 6 teams. I think you had 6 teams that earned the right. So yes, someone was going to be left out. 2 people were going to be left out on that earned the right. So then I think you don't go to the best team. I think you go to the most deserving team. Because best team just means I like you and I think you're going to make me money.
Right.
I don't think Rodemaker is going to sell tickets like Jalen Milroe. So, and you hear all that Jalen Milroe talk now for Heisman?
Yes. Well, he started that, after that Auburn game when he, looking at the camera and said, give me that MFer. But yeah, I've heard it, and I think it's. I'm an Alabama fan, sure, I'm saying that, but no, of course not. That's not the.
I listened to some people talking today, big names that were saying, yeah, he should have been there over Marvin Harrison. And I'm like, the guy who was benched in week 3,
right,
is going to, based on a 4th and goal on the 31 and a win against Georgia. There's just too much. There are too many good players. No, forget that.
Right. Maybe it sets him on a path for next year.
Yes.
All right. So let me ask you this. So now we're back to, doesn't matter what we thought most deserved, who got in. The committee put in who they wanted. So again, here's your 4: Michigan 1, Washington 2, Texas 3, Alabama 4. Okay, so that's not surprise. Did the committee, going with those 4, is that the right seeding order? 1, 2, 3, 4. Michigan has to be 1, absolutely.
Well, I'm going to throw that back at you. And I'm not saying that I don't think Michigan should be 1. Based on the ratings, Michigan, you could argue Washington should have leapfrogged them. I'm not arguing that. But does the sign stealing allegations mar Michigan's undefeated season and right to the number 1 in your eyes?
To me, it does not. I mean, again, I don't know enough about it. Like if it comes out after the fact and it was definitive and it was egregious and it gave them a clear advantage, then yes. Right now, it's these he said, she said, and you've got these other former coaches, Urban Meyer saying it's nothing. Deion Sanders, it doesn't matter. You can mail them the game plan, they still have to stop it. So to me, it's probably needs to be addressed, has been addressed, but unless. For me to think that it affected something or should affect these rankings, I would need to see a lot more evidence of wrongdoing. So to me, that wouldn't affect it. And I think Michigan is clearly the number 1. I think, and you and I have gone back and forth the last couple of weeks. You're the Michigan guy, but I think I'm more impressed with them than you are, at least right now. And maybe that's just because I've paid more attention to them this year. But I think they are really, really good. Now, I do think potentially we could be getting the best matchup of the playoff in round 1 in that Rose Bowl. But I think they absolutely got that right.
I also don't think that the sign stealing, if the sign stealing allegations had broken after Penn State and Ohio State and Michigan beat those 2 teams with the cloud, then okay, maybe keep them out. But I don't know. By golly, if Ryan Day and James Franklin still gave up their signs to Michigan, even with the rumors out there, then you guys do need to get fired. Like you should have changed some things at that point. So I think they won their toughest games without their coach, under adversity, in hostile environment for Penn State. Defensively, I know Iowa is bad, but they destroyed Iowa. Penn State destroyed Iowa too defensively, but I think they held Penn State in check. They held Ohio State for the most part in check. I think, and Michigan kind of does a little bit of, we'll bend, but we're not going to break. We're not going to give you the big plays. So teams do move on them a little bit more, but then they lock down at a certain point. And so I think they definitely are deserving. But do you think you don't see an argument for Washington ahead of them?
I don't. I mean, I think, look, Washington's obviously really good. They're undefeated. And Michael Penix Jr. is playing fantastic. I kind of look at the body of work, the level of competition. Like, I don't think going through the Pac-12 is as daunting as going through the Big Ten. I think, and that's not to discredit. I was a big Oregon guy all year, but I just think that that they're not as physical in the Pac-12. The defenses aren't as good. You've kind of made the point that Michigan's offense isn't that good, but their defense is great, and they're going up against great defenses every week. So I think in Michigan, number one, I'm good with Washington, number two. Again, they've earned it. So everything I just said was not meant to be disrespectful to Washington. I just think Michigan's on another level. I think the Big Ten is on another level right now. And so
I agree with that.
I think they have 1 and 2 right for sure, in my opinion. And I'm going to go.
The Washington people are going to say they beat number 5 Oregon. They beat USC when it was 20th. They beat Utah when it was 18. They beat Oregon State when it was 11. They beat Oregon when it was 5. And they beat an Arizona State or an Arizona team that eventually got raided. So I think they're going to say, look at us. We are, over half of our games are ranked teams. But I agree with you. I don't think the physicality. Well, you know what? I think what will answer that is when Washington, Oregon, UCLA, and USC come into the Big Ten next year. Do I expect them to run roughshod over Indiana? And Northwestern was actually okay this year. Purdue was bad. Do I expect them to run roughshod over those teams? Maybe. But do I expect them to run roughshod over a Maryland, an Iowa, teams like that? Right. I think they will get punched in the mouth, and they might still win, but I don't think you're going to see these 40, 50-point outbursts like you see in the Pac-12.
Right. I would agree with that. And then I'm good with Texas over Alabama. Obviously, they have the head-to-head. And again, make the argument all you want. Alabama's not the same team, but that's the same argument you used to keep Florida State out, and you can't do anything about that. Like, they played when they played. It was it was a home game for Bama, so I think that's right. I don't have any problems with that.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I think the order's fine.
I do too.
On that. I just know if I'm Michigan, I'm livid that I get Alabama and not Florida State.
Yeah, they did them no favors, and I mean, it's the way it played out, and it's the way it had to be. But I mean, and they showed the clip when they announced, who number 4 was, and you could see a little bit of deflatedness in the room for the Michigan. I mean, obviously they're thrilled and they're not scared of anybody, but certainly had Florida State been there, it's probably an easier matchup for them, at least in their eyes. So you kind of brought this up, and we danced around a little bit, but let's get the Coach Tuck, put it out there. Do these rankings truly matter? We got rid of the BCS, and we went to this playoff system. We have this committee, and we've got coaches on this committee or former coaches on this committee. And then we get the kind of the debacle, the chaos that we have this year. Do these rankings matter, or is this just kind of a PR thing to keep people engaged, keep people talking about the sport? And they're going to do what they want based off of whatever their metrics are, whether it's selling tickets, whether it's TV viewership, whether it's whatever the case may be. I'm pretty sure I know where you stand on this, but let's hear it, Coach.
I don't think it matters. I mean, I think it's like they want to create drama. Was last year, all of a sudden, Tennessee in the first unveil was number 1. Oh, Tennessee's back. And then Tennessee got thumped multiple times. And it's the first time a number one hasn't made the CFP. Now you have Ohio State thinking, well, we could get in because, Oregon or Washington will go away. Louisville upsets Florida State. Boom, we're in. No, you never had a chance.
Right.
They should have been put at number 8 and just said, look, you can't beat an interim coach against a team that you have been losing to year after year, and you said this is the year. Like, no, you're just done. Like, do I think Ohio State's a really good football team? Yes. Deserving at that point? No. The Big Ten is not strong enough to warrant 2 teams this year. And you knew Michigan. I think Michigan probably would have gotten in even if they had lost to Iowa. I mean, I think they should have, but does Florida State get in at that point?
That's what I was just going to ask you. So if you have a 1-loss Michigan and now you have that undefeated Florida State, what do they do? But I'm with you. I think they probably don't put Florida State in because there's no reason to not put Florida State in because you had 2 1-loss teams. Mm-hmm. So that, to me, they made their decision based on, and I think they're fairly honest. Look, third-string quarterback, we don't think they can be competitive. I mean, I think to their credit, they were somewhat honest about that. But to your point earlier, disingenuous about this whole process. Then why do we have, this? Why don't we just have a 1-game play? Everybody plays 1 game, and then you pick who you want. Okay, you guys are the best teams, and because that's what it seems like they're doing. You're just waiting to the end of the season and picking who you want anyway.
Well, you brought up a thing that I was just kicking around, and I have said this for a couple of years. There's 133, I think, FBS teams. So if you took 128, you would have a perfect bracket that works down. So the last 5, dude, if you're 130, you don't even deserve. Just go take up quilting. Go take up chess, work on your academics. You don't deserve it. Go down to the FCS or I don't know, play Division II for a while and maybe get a win or 2. But let's go 128. Boom, channel it down. You just keep playing until you get the actual champion and the losing teams they play. And then at the end there, you have a true 1 through 128 rating. And there's no, well, I got left out, or, oh, look at me. It's, did you win it all? No? Okay. Shut up. That's fair. In my mind, that's fair.
Yeah. Interesting. It certainly wouldn't fly.
It'll never work, but.
Yeah. All right. So let's take a look at this. Their solution isn't to go 128. Their solution is to go to a 12-team playoff. So let's take a look at what a 12-team playoff would look like according to, I think this was maybe Fox Sports. I don't know. We'll pull it up and we'll see what they say, because you pointed out some interesting stuff about people being left off of this list. So let's take a look at this. If we let me remove this. All right. So according to Fox College Football, if we had a 12-game playoff this year, we'd be looking at, if you're watching it, you can see the bracket. If not, we'll kind of read it to you. So you would have Alabama, Michigan, Texas, and Washington all with a first-round bye. So then you would have, similar to what you have in college basketball, you have a 12-5 seed, which would be Liberty and Florida State, according to this model. Okay, a 9-8 would be Missouri 9, Oregon 8. Then an 11-6, Ole Miss, Georgia, and a 10-7, more Big Ten, Penn State, Ohio State. So you kind of brought up something when we were talking before the show about a prominent team being left off of this. Why don't you walk us through that a little bit and then tell us what you think about this at least model of a 12-team playoff?
All right. So when you look at this, if you look at the rankings, Liberty has to get in as the top group of 5, and they're always going to be the number 12, that top group of 5. But you're leaving off a 10-2 Oklahoma team, a 10-2 Oklahoma team that beat Texas at Texas. And we just said that Texas is the third best team. They pummeled Iowa State, who ended up being better than we thought. That was a 30-point win. SMU ended up having a really productive season.
Oh, yeah.
That was a 28-11 win. I mean, when you look at it, they pummeled some teams. A 73-0, a 66-17. They dropped 69 on TCU. I mean, the defense at times left a little bit desired, but this is a team that could score. It's electric in that way, but you're leaving off a 10-2 12th ranked team that beats the number 3 team. How do you leave them out? 12's not enough. And honestly, do you really think Missouri and Ole Miss really have a shot at winning a national championship with this group?
So Ole Miss, they have already lost to. I think they lost their 2 losses were Georgia and Alabama, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe you're right.
So I mean, they are really good, 10-2 as well, but they've lost to 2 of these teams once already. Obviously, Penn State will have lost to both Michigan and Ohio State. Right? No, they didn't play them both, did they?
Yeah, they did.
Okay,
those
so
were the 2 losses.
Okay, so they lost both of those. So obviously Oregon having lost to Washington twice, Florida State undefeated, Alabama the 1 loss to Texas. That's fine. So yeah, it is a curious thing, and the deal is anytime you have something like this, you're always going to have somebody left out, somebody upset, and some of that is okay because my opinion has always been, if you let this thing get a little bit too big, then the regular season doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters for seeding, but that's the one thing I've always liked about college football and hated about it. 1 loss can be done. Now we have talked, if your loss is early in the season, it doesn't necessarily mean you're done, but Georgia would argue 1 loss, definitely you're done. 12 team, I think I could live with because it's still, in my mind, you still have to have a really good regular season to get in, and then I think it'll work itself out. Like we said, Ole Miss, Missouri, but I think if you get too big, yeah, you can get more deserving teams in, but then I think it kind of becomes like the NFL where you got these wild cards and kind of, as long as you were kind of like the bowl games. Like when I was growing up, the bowl games were pretty special if you got in, and now if you get 6 wins. And then if you don't get 6 wins, if not all the bowls are filled, then you can have 5 wins, And so I would hate for it to be watered. Yeah, I'd hate for it to be watered down because, that's one of the things I really enjoy about college football is how significant every game is. But there does need to be something so we don't get what happened to Florida State happening again.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I like what you said about watered down. Ole Miss, their only real win was a 55-49 win against LSU. A Tulane 37-20 win early against Tulane. Okay, that's a good group of 5 win. And LSU doesn't have a defense, but they have an electric offense. But they lost in week 4 to Alabama 10-24, 2 touchdowns. That was when Jalen Milroe had just come back from benching. Like, this was before Alabama caught their stride. And then they lost to Georgia 17-52.
Ooh.
That's a 5 touchdown shellacking. I'm sorry. I mean, wasn't the whole point that Florida State couldn't be allowed to be in because they weren't going to be competitive?
Correct.
That doesn't sound competitive. And wait, was our national championship game last year competitive? I can't remember.
It was not.
Oh, that's right.
It was not.
Georgia put up 100 points in the first quarter, and everybody turned it off. So, and how many times have we seen absolute dog walkings in the semifinals. Like,
Anytime Notre Dame's there, you see it.
yeah. But Cincinnati got manhandled. Michigan got manhandled 2 years ago by Georgia. So, like, this is watered down. I love putting a group of 5 in. In theory, let the little guy get in. No, if the little guy deserves it, then let him in. But at the same point, I'm looking at Missouri. I'm looking at Ole Miss. I'm looking at Penn State. I'm looking at Liberty. None of those teams have a shot at running with these big boys.
Right.
Get rid of them. Get rid of them. You got 2 losses, you're done. 1 loss, 0 losses. Okay. At that point, let's make up a bracket. We have 6 1-loss, 0-loss teams. 1 and 2 get a bye. 3-6 play, 4-5 play. 2 plays the 3-5 or 3-6 winner. 1 plays the 4-5 winner. You got 8 that year. Boom, no buys. You got 2 that year for some reason. Why have a semifinal? I think you have to keep it. You have to keep it pure, and you can't. I don't know. This is just about selling tickets, and I really think I don't know. Okay, let me ask this because I'm a conspiracy guy. We know this. How much do you think the 12-team playoff is actually about getting kids not to opt out?
Yeah, that's interesting because I think you would have these kids if they legitimately thought they had a chance to get back in the hunt and go play for a national championship. You wouldn't have as many opt outs. That's an interesting point.
Do you think Kyle McCord would leave Ohio State if he was in the playoffs?
No, I do not.
Do you think, I don't know if there's anybody else, but Georgia will probably have some people opt out of their bowl game.
Yeah.
You think they would? Florida State, do you think Jared Verse will opt out of their bowl game and not get hurt?
Yeah, and if you had Oklahoma in here, you'd probably have Dylan Gabriel.
Yep.
Stays. Interesting.
So, maybe not. Maybe they would still go. I don't know. But I'm guessing because, what is one of the biggest complaints right now about the bowls? The New Year's Six bowls, so many of them have opt-outs galore.
Right.
And you're going against the third-string quarterback anyways and the second-string line.
Right, and a lot of times an interim coach.
Yep.
So.
Oh, exactly.
So, all right. So let's shift gears here. Let's. I want to get to since we talked about obviously Florida State and stuff. I want to get to Coach Norvell's statement, and obviously, as you would expect, he's furious and rightfully so. I want to read you a statement. And we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into. I'll let you talk about potential lawsuit that's being talked about, which when we'll get to wouldn't matter because it would be litigated after the fact, but kind of points to the outrage. So let's look at this. Mike Norvell's statement says, I am disgusted and infuriated with the committee's decision today to have what we earned on the field taken away because a small group of people decided they knew better than the results of the game. What is the point of playing games? Do you tell players it is okay to quit if someone goes down? Do you not play a senior on senior day for fear of injury? Where is the motivation to schedule challenging non-conference games? We are not only an undefeated P5 conference championship, we also played 2 P5 non-conference games away from home and won both of them. I don't understand how we are supposed to think that this is an acceptable way to evaluate a team. And on top of that statement, there's a note here that I put on here that the Seminoles become the first undefeated Power 5 program to not earn a spot in the top 4 since the 4-team format started in 2014. So walk us through that. Agree with Coach Norvell?
100%. Thought it was very well said. And I think and you look at, I was just trying to pull Washington's schedule up really quickly. But you look at Alabama and Texas, they played each other in the non-conference. I know Washington, no, that was Washington. They had who was their non-conference? Did they have
Let's take a look here.
Trying to pull their non-conference up. Boise State. Okay, they did play Michigan State, and they played California. They played Boise State, Tulsa, Michigan State, and Cal. No, Cal is a conference game for them. So they played Michigan State. They didn't play a good P5 team, but they played a P5 team. Like I will give them that. And I don't think no one saw, and this was a home and home. No one saw how bad Michigan State was going to implode this year with everything that happened to them. So that's just like a whoa. But they at least did schedule. I mean, Michigan is the only. Georgia had Georgia Tech. I don't know about that. That's not much. But Michigan is the only team in there that didn't have a P5 opponent. And they didn't have one last year. Why? Why would you? I give it to Florida State. You went and you played one of the tougher schedules, probably one of the toughest non-conference schedules there is. What more? What can you ask for? I don't know. Am I wrong on this, or what is your take?
No, I think he is Coach Norvell is completely correct, completely on base, and has every right to be disgusted. You know, they did everything that they were told that the committee looks at. They had a tough non-conference schedule. They won their conference championship. They were undefeated. They were sitting at number 4. They did nothing they didn't have a close win, you know, to an inferior team at home. You know, they played in the conference championship game, won fairly convincingly, did everything they could. And I mean, from their perspective, I'm sure they feel lied to. They feel that it was deceitful. And we've kind of talked already about it, that, you know, the reason why is probably money and probably advertising and probably what they think maybe which groups would travel well, and they want a competitive game and they don't think it would be. It doesn't really matter what the reasons are. Those aren't justifiable reasons. Those are decisions being made not in the best interest of the kind of integrity of what you said the college football playoff was all about. And that was kind of why we left the BCS. It was too subjective, computers, and if you score a lot of points, you know, so this was supposed to remedy all that. And then when they have the opportunity to, you know, show that, look, we're sticking to what we said, they immediately fold. So I think he's dead on. I think he's got a great argument. And I think, you know, the best thing that he can do, of course, is going to be able to kind of use this to motivate his guys, and as a recruiting tool, you know, that us against the world, kind of like I talked about what I thought Michigan did with the suspension of Coach Harbaugh, you know, that there's nothing going to replace that. And I feel terrible, obviously, for him, but those seniors that won't be back, that should be playing for an opportunity, don't get to, not because of anything they did, but because somebody doesn't like their third string quarterback. Yep. So.
But on someone kind of popping off, and Norvell rightfully so, I want to get your take on Ron DeSantis, or as Donald Trump famously calls him, Ron DeSanctimonious, going to the local state government in Florida and asking for $1 million to bring a lawsuit against the NCAA for this decision.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You kind of already said that it's a little bit late because it's going to be litigated 2-3 years after the fact.
Right. So I think it's a little bit of political theater. Certainly he's, you know, in the debate tonight. So obviously he can maybe score some points that way. But look, he is the governor of that state, and he probably rightfully so also feels that this is a travesty to those kids. I don't think it will make any difference. I don't think anyone's going to pay any attention to it other than, maybe some constituents in that state briefly. But this is all going to go away. It's going to get the championship or the semifinals and the championship game are going to get played, and it'll be over and it'll be done. And this lawsuit will never come to fruition. So I think it's just political theater. Maybe playing to your home constituents, but there's really no intent that anything is actually going to come to it from this lawsuit. Now, hopefully, pressure from everybody else maybe would change it in the future. And of course, now we know there's 12 teams coming, so that'll alleviate some of it. But I don't think there's any pressure from this threatened lawsuit that would make any difference.
What I am hoping for, and this is just for me because I just want to sit back and watch the fire, I would love to see them place an injunction on the playoff and then litigate it.
Oh, wow.
Bring these guys back in 3 years. They're all coming out in their walkers, and none of them have, they're all in ties because they're accountants and lawyers now. Okay, now we'll play it. One hit and people go down, stretchers it's not going to be that bad. These guys would take care of themselves, but you know what I'm saying. Unless you can get an injunction, this is political grandstanding to some degree. I agree with that. Still, I think with Norvell and with DeSantis, you have to say these things. You have to go to bat for your people. You think last year, Nick Saban was like, oh, if you look, how many people would want to play Alabama in the playoff? We're a really good team. You lost twice. Shut up. Now Kirby Smart this year. He's doing the same thing. Oh, I think if you asked anybody I test, we pass and should be in there. Everybody's got to make their case. So that's why I think it comes down to win, you're in.
Unless you're Florida State.
Okay, it should be win and you're in.
Yeah, definitely should be. But, all right, so let's take a look real quick at these semifinal games. Just get a quick pick. We do some Heisman stuff and wrap up. This show has flown by. All right, so this graphic is not great as far as size, but anyway, here we go. This is the Sugar Bowl. This is Texas versus Washington. This is the late game on January 1st. I believe 8:45 Eastern, I think is what I saw. So it is pretty late, but that's New Year's Day. Sugar Bowl. Who do we like in this one? You like Washington or Texas?
Wow. I went against Washington last time, and I looked like a fool. I think that Texas has some dudes on the offensive line. That Sweat guy, I know why his last name is Sweat. Quarterbacks wake up and in a cold sweat thinking about playing him. That guy is a freak of nature, and he's not the only one. Like, they have other dudes on that line. I think they've got a lot of athletes. To me, it comes down, does Michael Penix Jr. have time to throw? Because I think his trio of wide receivers are phenomenal. And if he has the time to throw, he's going to pick Texas apart. So I think that game is won in that Washington wants to win the game in the secondary. Texas wants to win on the line of scrimmage. I worry about Texas. Quinn Ewers can be hot, and then he can be cold. And Washington really showed me some fight on defense. I think the Texas offensive side and the Washington defensive side is going to be an odd stalemate and just kind of negate. And then the other side, Texas's defense, Washington's offense. I think that's the really intriguing part of this.
Gotcha. All right, I'm going a different route. I'm going Texas Longhorns. They're not really. I'm from Texas, but they're not really my team. You know, my wife and all her family went to Texas A&M. I got a son at UTSA, daughter went to UTSA, and son now at Texas Tech. But I just think, man, Coach Sark, and I wasn't real high on him. You know, coming to Texas, I thought, but he's done a great job. I think Texas is really playing well right now. They've got a stable of running backs, even with Jonathan Brooks out. Obviously, both teams are going to be playing with a tremendous amount of confidence, of course. But they've got Texas has in their back pocket that Alabama win, so a little bit of swag and confidence. So I'm going Texas, and I'm going probably I would say 10-point win by Texas.
I know I haven't really given my thought. You know what? Just for fun, just to make this interesting between the two of us, I'm going to go Washington on a late field goal.
All right, Washington by 3. So we'll write that down and look at that.
Okay.
All right, so now here we go. We got a little bit bigger graphic here. So this is the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all, which I never understood that because you did, because you're a Big Ten guy. But I remember hearing Keyshawn Johnson one time. This was, when Notre Dame was pretty dominant, and they had beat Keyshawn had never beat Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame, and even might have been when they got their national championship. And Keyshawn said, "Yeah, but they never played in a Rose Bowl." I was like, "Yeah, but back then the Rose Bowl was, Pac-10, Big Ten. Nobody else could play." But anyway, Rose Bowl, iconic, historic. So number 1 versus number 4, Michigan and Alabama. This game is at 5 p.m. Eastern, if I'm not mistaken. This, I think, is by far the best game. This should be a game that we look and think, wow, that could have been or should have been the championship. I'll let you pick first this time. Let's see. You've been on a streak here picking against Big Blue. Let's see where you're at this week.
Whoa. Did you just say that this should have been the national championship game?
I mean, I think so. I mean, just based on how good of a game I think is going to be, and probably the two best teams as far as where they're playing. Now, I'm not saying the seeding should be different, but I'm just saying like who's playing really well, playing the best right now of the 4. This would be the dream matchup, I think. So,
I think for me, I did pick Michigan, and I did think they would cover the 21 against Iowa because I knew their defense would shine. The one area on defense where Michigan struggles a little bit, if they have a struggle on defense, it's a running quarterback. Milroe has shown that he can be destructive on the ground. Does that change how Michigan has to run their zones? And they love their zones. I think if Michigan can contain Milroe and force him to beat them in the air, I think that's victory Michigan. As long as Will Johnson is back. Will Johnson is a stud. He's an All-American. He's a future first-round draft pick. I think Michigan finally has the line and the linebackers to handle an Alabama and SEC run game. I just worry about Michigan's offense right now. Since Harbaugh went down with suspension, they have not looked right. Their offensive line is banged up. Zach Zinner is not coming back. Did you see for the first time in for a while, that they are not even in the finalists for the Joe Mann Award?
I did not see that.
They didn't make the finals, and rightfully so. Like, their line has been suspect. They had to run 32 straight times against Penn State because they couldn't keep the DNs out of the backfield. And I have a feeling that Alabama's got some good DNs, and it's going to be hard for J.J. McCarthy to get the passing. So Michigan's run game hasn't been dynamic. They do enough. They're opportunistic, They get good field position on that good defense. I'm going to go Michigan just because I want to enjoy the game and I want to root for Michigan. So I'm going to go Michigan. But again, this is a field goal game to me. And if Alabama spanked them, it would not surprise me. If Michigan spanked Alabama and finally found their offense, it wouldn't surprise me. I think Jesse Minter is one of the most underrated defensive coordinators in the game. Like, I think he will scheme up a good plan, and he makes really good adjustments at halftime. So, I mean, I think if you look at his halftime adjustments, you can say anything you want about sign stealing, but it wasn't like Michigan against Ohio State had good first halves. They had dominant second halves, and that's because of the adjustments that are made. So I think if Michigan can stay in it and not get behind like they did last year against TCU, Michigan wins that game. To me, the first 10 minutes will tell you whether Michigan wins or loses.
Interesting. All right. We'll definitely keep an eye on that. Here's what I'm going to go with. And I'm going to stick with, I've been riding this Michigan against every fiber of my being as an Irish fan. I think it's going to come down to, and I think you're right, close to a field goal game. I think it's going to come down to a special teams play. And I think it's probably a punt return by Michigan that sets them up late in the game. I think that's the X factor there. The other thing is, you've talked about, are they going to be healthy? And the offense they're going to have, a month off or so, close to a month, for Jim Harbaugh to get that scheme right, for guys to get healthy. Obviously, the same will be with Alabama, but I think you give Harbaugh that time, he'll get that ship right. And I think Michigan wins this year. And it's not an upset. They're the number 1 seed, but I think it's very close. And I think an explosive play, maybe special teams or maybe a defensive interception, something like that. I think the Alabama magic runs out in this game.
Most of the people that I'm listening to online, the talking heads, say that by the day of the game, Michigan will be the dog. A 3 to 5 point dog on that.
Yeah, because right now they're last I looked, they were a 2-point favorite, and Texas was a 4-point favorite. So yeah, money will move for sure.
Yep.
So, all right, last thing, and we'll go through this kind of quick because we're running a little long here, but just want to talk now that the conference championship games are over. Obviously, Jaden Daniels didn't play in that, but now the Heisman Trophy, the finalists have been announced. It's Jaden Daniels from LSU, Michael Penix from Washington, Bo Nix from Oregon, and Marvin Harrison has been invited from Ohio State. We've talked at length kind of about that it's a quarterback award. But now with those conference championship games, really what I mean is the Oregon-Washington game. Does that sway your pick? So I'd like to know who you would give it to and who you think the committee is going to give the Heisman Trophy to.
To me, it's super, super sad that everybody is like, oh, Bo Nix just lost himself the Heisman. And to me, yeah, I mean, I get it. He wasn't phenomenal. 3 touchdowns, 239 yards, 1 interception, but him and Penix traded interceptions there. I mean, you could argue, you look at Penix, 319, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, little better percentage. To me, I don't like it that the conference championship in most people's mind, decided this. Jaden Daniels gets to sit back and he's like, it's not mine to lose anymore. And Bo Nix and Penix had to go out and not lose it. And I don't know that either of them did enough to win it. So I mean, I've been banging the drum for Jaden Daniels the whole time. But I think it's dumb that Bo Nix lost it for not winning. And that's what it came down to. People weren't even talking about his game. Right. They were just like, oh, well, 2 losses. LSU has 3.
Right.
And, a good point that was made was, well, Jaden Daniels knows he has to score every time to win because his defense isn't getting a stop. Pac-12 play a lot of defense?
Nope.
Bo Nix and Penix Jr., they had to do the same thing. They know that this is a track meet here. I mean, you got to score, and you got to score quickly. And so, I think all three of them are in a very similar boat. Most deserving to me, Jaden Daniels.
Okay. And who will the committee give it to?
I think Jaden Daniels.
Okay.
I think they will say Bo Nix lost it, and Penix Jr. was just a little too fluky at times. And I think they're going to look at the 1 touchdown, 1 interception in the final game and say, he didn't do enough to win it.
Right. I would agree with that. You look at Jaden Daniels, his last game was against A&M, and he went 16-24, which is not fantastic, but 235 yards and 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. So the last memory of him was dominating. He's now the favorite, according to the odds makers, at negative 1430. Penix is plus 600, so he's second. Bo Nix all the way up to plus 1600, and then Marvin Harrison is like plus 15,000. But I think, to your point, same thing. I think they're going to look at Penix. He struggled a little bit down the last couple of games before the conference championship. Obviously, he won that, but wasn't spectacular. Bo Nix, I think, like you said, it was his to lose, and whether or not he should have or not, I agree with you. I think Jaden Daniels is going to get it, and I still think, I would give it to Bo Nix, but that's why I'm here doing a podcast for free, and those guys are making a lot more money than I am.
Well, here's an interesting thing. One of these quarterbacks has over 1,000 yards rushing. One quarterback has slightly under 250. One has negative.
Oh.
Do you know who has the negative?
I would guess. Well, it sounds like you're setting me up. My initial gut would be Bo Nix, but now I'm thinking maybe based on that, maybe it was Penix, but I don't know.
It was Penix.
Wow.
So Penix threw for a ton of yards, but negative rushing yards. Bo Nix had 228, I think it was 228. A 40-3 touchdown to interception ratio and 4,000 plus yards. That's legit. Like, you cannot ask for much better than that. But Jaden Daniels, 40-4, 3,800 and some, but 1,100 rushing yards.
Yeah, that's the difference maker there.
How many Division I teams, how many FBS teams, and I don't know this, I'm just throwing this out rhetorically, have a running back with 1,100 yards?
Yeah. I wonder what LSU's running backs, they're probably 500-600 yards apiece. Probably got 2 or 3 of them at that.
Oh, he so far blew away. I'll tell you. Let me see. 652 for Diggs. 233 was the next closest.
Oh, wow. Okay. He was the offense.
Oh, yeah. He had about as many rushing yards as the rest of his team combined.
Goodness.
Michigan, who is known as a running team, Blake Corum did hit 1,000 yards. He had 1,028. Donovan Edwards had a bad season at 382.
That's impressive for Mr. Daniels. So, all right, well, we'll wrap this episode up. We will have an announcement shortly. We may be transitioning, have to talk some NCAA women's college basketball as that season's been heating up. But stay tuned. Please follow us on all our socials, our 2 X, formerly known as Twitters, Mental Dimes CFB, our YouTube channel, Mental Dimes, as well as our Facebook. And look, follow, subscribe on the podcast. Share it as well, and look for announcements for our upcoming podcast. And until next time, Coach, we will see you then.
See you guys.